Hello, welcome, greetings to everybody who joins us today in our Facebook Live session. I am Anna from Projects RH. As you know, we are investment specialists connecting the world, and we connect projects and money. Many of our clients come to us with a brilliant idea, asking us to help them turn this idea into successful businesses. Well, the first step to make a successful business is to make a successful business plan. That is why we have a special guest today, our strategic ally, Dr. Warren Harmer from the Business Plan Company.
Hello.
Hello,
How are you?
how are you? Okay, let
Very
me
good,
tell
thank
you
you.
just a little bit about Dr. Warren. He is a PhD in sciences. He earned his PhD lots of years ago. That's what he says. And then he discovered his true calling, which basically is business. And so he's had 5 different businesses in Australia in the past years, ranging from a restaurant to a printing company. So welcome again. And could you please tell us a little bit of this facet of your life as a businessman?
Yeah, sure, no worries. So I guess the story started really at the time of the restaurant. So I came out of university, I'd spent a long time there, so I was very, very highly educated formally. But that restaurant was my first business, and that was the hardest 6 years of my life. And that's really what set me down this path of the work that I'm doing now. So I came out of that experience thinking there must be better support for small business. And so in that time, I've had a number of businesses, but the big focus of what I've been doing is coaching and consulting, helping people start businesses, and that has evolved into the Business Plan Company, which has now been operating about 5 years. So yeah, so we specialize in helping small businesses to grow, to get started, all sorts of entrepreneurial businesses, and those people that you're talking about that come along with the big idea and want to connect that big idea and turn it into a business opportunity. We help them take that big idea and transform it into something that somebody else can understand and look at the business opportunity.
Okay, and so you work with different types of business plans. Can you tell us a little bit of examples of the different projects you've worked with?
Sure. So, look, the range of the businesses is very wide. We don't have a particular industry, so projects that we've worked on can be as wide as somebody starting a cafe, somebody doing an online platform. They can be finance. We've done projects on things like medical cannabis. There's a lot of huge growth industries that people come along. But the focus for us, it's about those businesses that are growing and starting. Lots of startups, those businesses that are seeking investment, and that can be from their family, it can be from formal investment such as venture capital or angel investors, or it can be bank loans. So the work that we do, we take them from that situation where a lot of the time they have little or no idea. We look at the market, we understand the potential, put some financial modeling together. And of course, we do a lot of projects for migration, because that's a big activity in the business world where people are seeking to start businesses in other parts of the world. And we also work a lot with businesses that are already operating. And so what we do is we really take the business apart, find out what's working well, what's not working well, and then help them to create a roadmap forward so that'll contribute to their growth over the long term.
Okay, so this is like basically every type of project can benefit from a successful business plan.
Absolutely.
Okay, so can you please take us through step by step through the process of creating a business plan?
Sure. Okay, so the way that we like to work like it's a little mini consulting project. So just bearing in mind that obviously the outcome of a business planning project is a business plan, but the process of putting it together is probably the most valuable part. So we like to talk about business planning as an activity rather than just having that perfect document at the end. So what that means is that we go through all parts of the business and the business idea with the business owner. So we start off with a good background on what it is that they want to achieve. And that can be something that's really well defined, say from somebody who's in business already, or somebody who may have done some research themselves. Also from somebody who has absolutely no idea. They just have the idea, and that's all they have. So we need to understand what the situation is for that person who's getting into business at the start. So we get a good understanding of where they're at. And then as we work through the projects, which work from anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, we go back and forth with the client to understand what it is that they want to, where they want to go. We're putting research, doing research, we're putting financials together, startup costs, and we go back and forth with the client over that time, so that we're progressively collecting the information. And we get the client involved in the process because it's going to be their business ultimately. So they need to be involved and understand what they're getting into. So we might ask them things about how much they expect their products or services to cost, what other costs of the business are going to be, who the competitors are, so they get involved in the process. So it's quite conversational along the way. So we do most of the work, but obviously we get guidance from them to make sure it's accurate. And then as along the way, as we get things ready, we send them for feedback. So that might be startup costs, it might be some financial modeling or projections. And then once the actual business plan is ready, we send that to them to get their feedback so they can look at the whole thing and say, okay, well, that's accurate or not, or what things they want to change. But most of the time, we're 95% accurate. And then we make any changes that they like, and then the business plan is finished.
Okay, but specifically, what goes into a business plan?
Okay, so they do vary a little bit depending on what the application is for the audience for the plan. But really, what you want to do is clearly define what the business concept, products, and services are. And now that sounds like a really obvious thing, but quite often the way that the business owner describes what it is that they're going to offer, particularly if they're starting off, is not as well defined as you might think, especially if it's something new or novel. And especially for technology projects, they might come along and say, well, I wanted to connect drivers and ride sharers. But there's a lot of detail that goes into that, a lot of functionality that maybe they haven't thought of. So we really want to pick and understand what it is that they want to achieve. What's the business model? What's the service? Every business has compliances, so we want to understand what they are. Where are they going to set their business up? Do they have a premises? Do they need equipment? Who's going to be on their team? The startup costs, projections, who is the market, what's going on in the market, marketing and sales, pricing, and then sometimes there's other specific things that go into a particular plan. So if that plan is for an investor, or in Australia we have a number of government agencies where if you're applying for a service within that agency, then you need to meet some specific criteria. So we need to make sure those things are answered. Also, migration is very specific criteria. And then there's some other information that's specific to the type of business. So some of the content of a manufacturing business will be different for an online business, for example. Sometimes people have teams of 10 or 20 people, sometimes they have none. And there is some variation, even though those particular sections are in all business plans, how much emphasis is given to those depends on the type of business.
Okay, so it's not hard. I mean, everybody has the information they need to give you, and then you just set everything up for them.
Well, and that's our intention, is that we make it easy.
Yeah. Okay.
So we really want to guide them through the process so that they get to the end, and not only do they have a plan, but they also have a good idea of what they're going to be doing in the future.
Okay, so you work with businesses that are just starting and businesses that are already established.
That's
What
right.
is the differences between those two in the making of a successful business plan?
Okay, so if you're working with a business that's already operating, you already have some information from the business that is operating, and that can be types of clients, things that have worked and haven't worked. You already have some financial results, so you know what the margins are. And so when you're starting off with an operating business, you're starting off with a set of data that's based on actual performance of the business. When you're doing a new business, you don't have any of that. So you have to make a lot of assumptions. And because we've done so many of them, we have a reasonable idea of what goes on in a business, and we work with businesses that are operating, so we have a good idea. But with a new business, you don't know for sure what's going to happen, and you might estimate that your profit margins are going to be at a certain level, but you don't know for sure. So for an operating business, you do know those things. For new ones, you don't. So it's a really good idea for a new business that they go back and review their plan after 3 months and 6 months and 12 months and say, okay, well, we thought the margins were going to be 50%, say, actually they were 45. And so you just need to adjust a little bit once you have actual trading data.
Okay. What are the benefits of going through the business planning process that you're talking about?
Okay. So I get asked this a lot. What is the point? You're going to put all this effort into it, so what's the point of doing this? If you're an operating business, most of the businesses that I've worked with, they're in operational mode day to day. they're making decisions for today and maybe this week, but they very rarely get out of that mode where they're thinking about what's going to happen in the future. So rather than being in that tactical mode, it draws the business owner out of there and says, okay, what's actually happened? Where do we want to go? What's worked, and how are we going to get there? And so it's sort of taking it out and making some bigger picture decision making.
Yeah, something like the tree can't let you see the forest, right?
That's right. It's kind of taking it up a level, so you can kind of look around and say, okay, what's going on in the market? Oh, my competitors are doing this now. I didn't realize that. I haven't done a review for a while. Our profit margins have gone down over the last 2 years. What's going on there? So it just sort of gets you out of that day-to-day reactive mode. And then in the plan, you actually kind of set a clear path to say, right, we need to be going here. We need to do these 10 things in the next year. And it gives you a bit of a accountability to actually do those things. It also actually gives you a chance to sort of look at what the dangers are. And as I mentioned, competitors are one, but technology is changing all the time. And there's plenty of examples of businesses who weren't aware that something was creeping up on them. And then you look like a Kodak or bookstores, the taxi industry, they all got taken over because they weren't looking out for the technology that was coming. And so you need to take time out of your business and see what's going to happen. And most of the time for small businesses, those things do affect them. Technology can affect them. It can be things like planning and trends in the market. Retail, obviously, everything's going online. So if you're not paying attention, then you're going to be in trouble.
There are a lot of factors that you take into account into the building of a business plan.
Absolutely. And so you want to make your mistakes on paper. You want to create a vision for the company. So if you've got staff, then they can look at that and say, okay, well, we're all going in this direction. So everybody knows where you're all going. And just improves that day-to-day decision making because it's aligned to a bigger picture goal rather than what am I doing in the next 5 minutes or next 10. I mean, there's a lot of cliches about failing to plan and planning to fail and all this kind of stuff. But for me, like people who've had a business plan didn't go well, people who have gone well without a business plan. But if you did all those things, you did projections, you review the market, and you look at and create an annual action plan for your development, pretty much every business would be better off doing that. And it would pay for the cost of doing the business plan many times over.
Okay, so about talking about costs and help, outside help, why should I employ a company to do something that probably I could do myself? Okay,
look, the first thing is that unless you're an exceptional person, you won't do it, even if you know you should do it. I mean, I've been doing consulting for about 20 years, and for small businesses that I've worked with, I would say that certainly less than 10% of them ever had a plan, like ever. And I would say that's probably closer to 5%. And the ones that actually do active planning on a regular basis, I would say it's 1 or 2%. So the reason you'd employ someone, number one, is so you would actually do this, even if you know how to do it, you probably aren't doing it. Having that external expertise, and it's not necessarily that I know more than the business owner, because quite often they know more about their particular business, but I see a lot of businesses. So I get good benchmarking. I can see some of those things that other businesses that are doing that business owner might benefit from. It's the external perspective, that the questioning and the taking apart of the business, and you can kind of say why you're doing it that way, that they might have done for 5 years and never questioned themselves, and then they have to go back and say, oh well, there is a better way. So it's having someone outside who can challenge you and who has different perspective, different expertise, and knows a few tricks just because I've done so many of them and I see what businesses do. So I know what best practice is in a range of industries. So somebody who's a plumber would have no idea what somebody in technology is doing, whereas I see both. So there might be some crossover there that's actually quite useful.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so if I am going to fund my own business, should I have a business plan?
Absolutely.
Do I still need one?
Yes. So I would say that the most common way that small businesses manage their business is trial and error. I'll try one thing. If it works, it may not work. So, and marketing is a very common thing that people do that. I see lots of people who go along to a seminar and they have some expert up there saying, you need to be on Facebook. And so they run off all terrified, I need to be on Facebook, and then they get a consultant on Facebook and spend thousands of dollars and it wasn't the right thing to do. Okay, next thing, I need to be on Google ads, or I need to be using this platform. So take yourself out of the business for a short period of time, analyze all of those things, and don't do trial and error, because every time you make an error, it costs you thousands, and that can be the wrong staff, wrong equipment, wrong marketing. So, as I said before, make your mistakes on paper, decide where you're going, and then act, rather than thinking, okay, I need to do something, I'll pick up the phone and spend thousands of dollars, which is what I normally see.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I could probably get a cheaper plan somewhere in the internet, right? Just go
Look, you
online.
could download a free template and
But
probably have someone who knows nothing
why
about
should
you.
what's the difference between that and what I would be getting with the business plan company and Projects RH?
Okay. So this is the question that I would pose to get a business owner to think about that. So in the long term of your business, the difference between success or degrees of success, so if it's really successful, you could be hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of dollars better off if you get some good advice at the start. So the difference then between you paying for a business plan, someone cheaper, or doing it yourself, or maybe getting it even free, is probably maybe 500 or 1,000 Australian dollars. So when you look at the big picture, and I'm talking going back to that trial and error, I mean, when I had a restaurant, I hired the wrong person. That cost me $30,000. So had I had good advice, and it probably would have cost me $500 at the time, you can do the sums pretty quickly and see the value of somebody who knows what they're doing, who can question you, and you walk away into your business with certainty about what you're doing, and don't make dumb mistakes that always cost you lots of money.
Okay.
So as I said before, if you want someone to spit out the document for you, you could probably get a student or someone in another country to do it for $50. That's one thing. It's the process of doing it that turns you into a better business owner and allows you to make decisions. It's not a cut and paste, change the name. This is about you running a better business, and that business plan documents the decisions that you need to make to run that business better. It's not just about preparing a perfect document. It's about what goes into it. That's the greatest value.
Okay. You know that, well, we work with lots of people who are migrating and who have need a lot of help with their business plans and understanding the business world in Australia, and that's part of what we do. What are the particular factors that affect business plans for migration?
Okay, so when you're putting a plan together for migration, there's a little bit of a pitch involved, as well as creating the plan. So because obviously it needs to be appealing to the authorities that are going to be approving this application. So we need to present your business concept that is the strongest case that's going to complement your submission. But at the same time, it needs to be realistic. It needs to be something that you can actually do, something that aligns with your skills and experience. So one thing about any kind of application, be it migration, finance, there's no guarantee, but obviously the better business case you have put together, then the better your chances are of it getting approved. So it needs to be well planned, it needs to be well researched, and it needs to, this is very important, the business that you're going to propose that you're going to start, it needs to have economic impact. So the governments here are interested in the benefit for their particular state or Australia. So those things need to be very prominent in terms of putting the business together and in terms of the business you want to start. So the things that the governments are interested in, local technology, they're interested in export, they're interested in skills development. And so these are the kinds of things that we really need to factor into the business that you decide that you want to do. So it needs to show the benefit to the local economy. It needs to show that you're well researched. It needs to be realistic. And it's genuine. We don't put together business plans that are just to tick a box. We work with you to put together something that you could hopefully come and actually start here, and it's going to fit with your business experience. So for those people who haven't been, it definitely gives much better strength if you have been to your destination country, Australia in our case, and you have actually done some real research. It counts a lot because it shows that you're genuine about the application.
And then that's another distinguishing factor between knowing your business, having the experience to guide
Mm.
somebody, and going on the internet or whatever.
And that's right.
So, yeah,
That's
what
right.
is your experience writing for migration
Yeah, so
applications?
look, we work with about 200 migration agents across Australia who send us plans. And I'm not sure how familiar the audience is with the different types of plans, but there's a number of plans in Australia that are just pure business and investment visas. We do a lot of those, and then we also do employment visas. In some visas in Australia, then the sponsoring business needs to have a business plan when they apply to sponsor somebody to come
Yeah.
and live and be their employee. Yeah, but so we do probably about half of our business is migration plans.
Okay, so you are like a fish in water in migration applications and
Yeah, we do a
business
lot.
plans.
I
Okay.
think that complements that is because we deal with people who are starting businesses and people in business, then we get a good sense of what's going on in the market. And that's very helpful because then it feeds back into the plans we do for migration.
Yeah, sure. So, how long does it take to make a business plan?
Okay, so we have clients that come along and say, can I have it done in a week? And that is fine, we can do it. But I always say a bit more time with business planning is definitely beneficial. So ideally, if you had 3 or 4 weeks, that's a good time because you need time to review and think, and then we'll come back and ask you questions and maybe you don't know the answer straight away. So just to have that time to, the conversation that I was talking about before, just to work it out. For a brand new business, you don't necessarily know every detail at the start. So you sometimes need time to consider. So if you're really on a deadline, we could get it done in about a week. Ideally, it would be 3 to 4 because we send the plan back to the applicant and the migration agent wants to have a look as well. So by the time everybody has a look and makes sure they're happy with everything, then it's good just to have that breathing time to make sure that it's accurate.
Okay, so after you write the business plan, do you accompany your clients, in the whole process or through time to every 2 or 3 months and reassess, or how does
Look,
that work?
typically because quite often we work with the migration agent who handles the migration side. So usually they tend to work with the client for the ongoing sort of application process. Sometimes we get questions that come back. So say from the state government, they want more detail, then obviously we help out and make sure. And then sometimes we have clients that when they actually land and they start their business, they want some help to work in the local market, and we do that too, because obviously we know them pretty well by then.
Okay. What is your experience writing for finance, banks, and loans?
Yeah, sure. So again, we do a lot of those, hundreds of plans for venture capital or bank loans. We've had ANZ and National Australia Bank are two of our biggest banks in Australia, and we've had feedback from them that they were amongst the best plans that they've ever seen.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Do I?
we try to. Our approach with the plans is that we try to write something that somebody who knows nothing about this particular business can understand what it is that they're trying to do. Because ultimately, it could be someone in a bank, it could be someone in a government agency who's sitting in an office who knows absolutely nothing about this business. And so that's your golden opportunity to convey to them what the business is, what the advantages are, how it's going to work. And so therefore, we really try to break it down to a level where somebody with some business knowledge but no industry knowledge can pick it up and understand what it is that this business is. You need to, needs to be able to communicate what it is to someone who's completely outside and knows nothing about you.
Yeah, especially if your client is a migrant, is the process of migration that doesn't know the business aspects of Australia. They need
That's right.
that also,
Very
right?
important.
Yeah. Well, so do I need to meet with an attorney before I make my business plan, or don't?
Okay, so look, we get people who come along who haven't met an attorney or a migration agent. I would say that if you are going to go through migration, there's benefits from talking to the agent first, because there's a number of different types of visas that you might be applying for. So they will then advise you to say which one is the best one for you, and then we work with that particular visa. So the plans do vary depending on what state you want to go to, depending on what kind of visa you're going to. And so therefore, if you talk to them first, we then have a much clearer picture about where you want to go. But we do work together with the attorneys and agents to make sure that everything is accurate and that it's completely aligned with the person's experience, but also the application process and the particularities of those particular laws So we just make sure that all the plans and everything's aligned to give you the best chance.
Yeah, in Projects RH, we have another line of strategic alliances with lawyers specializing in migration, and they are part of our integral services. Like we have like the whole chain.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. So, how long should my business plan be?
Look, the average would be somewhere between 30 and 50 pages, I guess. That does depend a lot on the business, but they tend to be, for most of them, tend to be about 30 to 40 pages.
Okay, so where do I start?
Okay, so look, our job is to make the process as easy as possible. If anyone wants to just have a general conversation around business planning, or starting a business or improving their business, then the easiest thing to do is just to have a chat. I can just talk through their particular situation and then explain how our services might benefit from them. And then basically we'll hold their hand through the whole process. So it's as easy as just having a short chat to understand where they're at, and then we can explain how we can help.
Okay. So thank you, Warren. Do you think there's something else that we need to input into this conversation? Any closing ideas?
Look, if anything, I would just say there's a lot of cliches around business planning, and there's a lot of experts out there who will, sort of tell you all sorts of things about their particular type of planning. It's a really valuable process. The value, I'll give you an example of a client that actually an agent who's a client of mine. We went through it about 12 months ago, like a planning process where we took their business apart. And we've sort of since that time in the last year, they've sort of implemented a lot of strategies in their business. And their revenue has gone up more than 50% in that time. And it's not a wild change in strategy. It's just knowing where to go, where to put your energy, what's working, what's not working. Stop wasting money on things that aren't working. And then just really, it's like the way I think about it, if you have all of your team in a boat and you're all rowing in the same direction, well, you're just going to get there better. So you just need to know what the direction is. And that's what
put your ducks in a row.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay,
and most businesses are kind of going around in circles because they don't have that sort of clear direction of where they're going. And it's for the time and effort that you put into it, I think it's incredibly valuable.
Okay, so
just
Warren,
do it.
Okay. Yeah, so it's really nice chatting with you.
Yeah,
thank you for joining us today. Yeah, okay,
awesome.
So everybody, thanks for being with us today. Remember to contact us, visit our webpage in projectsrh.com.au, and any information or questions, you can just write us at info@projectsrh.com.au. And remember, next Wednesday, that's 12 February at noon Sydney time, and February 11th at 8 p.m. Colombia, we will be talking about the benefits of investing in Australia. We have another special guest, Jean-Michel Floch from the Floch International Group. So thanks, and see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.